So in Plato's dialogue Phaedrus, Socrates runs into Phaedrus at the edges of the Athenian city-state, very near to the walls of the city, and Phaedrus has just heard a great speech by Lysias, I think, and Socrates really wants to hear it. So they leave the walls of Athens and walk along the river, and eventually they're among the trees, and Socrates says to Phaedrus that he long ago gave up inquiring into nature and philosophy of nature, and turned instead to politics and to discourse, dialogue with other people, other human beings, other rational animals. So he learns within the walls of the city for the most part, and has nothing to learn from the trees, he says. But of course, Phaedrus and Socrates eventually find a nice, soft, grassy spot along the river under a tree, a Platon tree, which is the Greek name of this particular species of tree, and I don't think it was a accident that Plato would use this particular tree as the setting for Socrates and Phaedrus's conversation. So we can't really take Socrates' statement about the lack of education that he receives from trees at face value. Something deeper is going on, right? So what is the significance of the life of a tree, or of plant life more generally, for a philosopher? Plato, unlike another philosopher, Aristotle, thought that the growth of trees, that very minimal form of life, was in fact an expression of desire. So plants, like animals and humans, desire. They participate in eros, and to that extent they participate in at least some degree of intelligence. Eros is what links the soul with ideas, what links creaturely existence with the eternal heaven from which it originated. So to say that plants participate in desire is to say that they partake of intelligence as well. Aristotle denied this, and later a Neoplatonist, Plotinus, would accept that plants have intelligence, but he would say that matter does not. That Plotinus was an emanationist, so out of the one beyond being, this infinite Godhead, there sort of emanates or overflows these various levels of being that descend through nous, or the intellect, into the world soul, the anima mundi, the psyche cosmou, I think is the Greek for it, and then from there into nature, the physical, visible aspect of nature, and then from there into just this pure sort of raw material, pure chaos, which can only be defined negatively. It's kind of defined through privation. It's just the lack of intelligence, the lack of order. And matter becomes this mere nothing. But still, Plotinus had a lot of interesting things to say about how plants participate in intelligence. So their sort of plant life is one step up on the great chain of being from mere matter. Animals follow, and then humans, the rational animal, and then angels and so on. But what are we to do with matter? If we go back to Plato, he didn't have this emanationist scheme as Plotinus did. For him, matter was sort of the matrix of becoming. It was the receptacle of form, a sort of creative womb from out of which ideas were given birth. So here we have, I think, a more interesting, slippery concept of matter in Plato. But then, if we try to understand what we might mean by matter in a more concrete way, because it's actually a pretty abstract concept, right? We never see just pure matter. We always see form, various kinds of form, right? When I look around, I see grass, trees, stars, and the sky. You don't just see pure nothingness anywhere. It's really an idea that we invent, an abstraction that we invent when we consider, what it must be or might be that underlies all of the particular forms of material expression that we see around us. But if we were to try to think matter concretely, I think, we would have to think it in terms of Earth, right? Earth would be the most concrete expression of materiality. And when we think of matter in an earthly way, then matter becomes, as I was saying before, it's kind of preformed. It's already sort of spherical of necessity, and it tends to close in around itself. So matter comes in a sort of granular, or you could say atomic, form. This isn't your classical Newtonian kind of atomism. It's a sort of non-scalar atomism, which is to say that there are indivisible wholes that emerge at every level of nature, not just at the microscopic, but at every level. So it's a kind of non-scalar or even dynamic atomism, where matter comes into relationship with form in a kind of dynamic or co-creative way, where neither pre-exists the other, but both call forth one another in the act of being what they are. So, in a sense, you could call this a dynamic atomism. You could call it a kind of planetary materialism, or again, a materialism of the plant.